Director of the Institute for Southern Studies. Therefore, when speaking to someone with so many titles, accolades, and awards in Southern history, I need to start a conversation with an essential question for every Southerner. What flavor of barbecue sauce is best, mustard, ketchup, or vinegar-based?
The answer is fish and chips, obviously.
Fish and chips, okay. Well, I didn't include the Alabama white sauce, because that doesn't count. But
I would tell you that barbecue has been hard acclimation for me. And it's not that I don't like it, it's just the subtleties have eluded me. And it's ironic because my colleague, Matt Simmons, is teaching a class on Southern barbecue. And he started it last year. It's immensely popular. I mean, within 72 hours, there's 100 students had signed up for this.
That's a class I want to audit.
You should. I mean, people love this thing. And we're going to expand it. And he's going to offer it again in the spring of 2026. And I went to visit him in that class, and I learned more in that one class about the varieties of cuts, tastes than I have just living here, because it's not something that I normally eat. If I do eat it, though, I'm quite partial to the vinegar variety. So there is an answer.
The PD, Eastern North Carolina.
There's
PD
a PD,
version.
Eastern North Carolina. That's right.
You know, there was a geography professor here at one time who actually drew the map of the state, divided by barbecue sauce preferences.
Was that Chuck Kovacic?
I think it was.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, you know, most conversations between Southerners starts with some type of cuisine, Southern cuisine.
Right,
so
right.
I figure we need to start there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you say y'all yet. I don't really hear that. I think I've heard it, but not really that often. But I really just want to find out, do you consider yourself a Southerner? And if you're willing to put on your professorial hat today, what does it mean to be a Southerner?
God, you're testing me on an afternoon here, aren't you? Well, first of all, I would tell you that I think one of the greatest gifts the Southern accent has given the United States, if not the world, is y'all. It's hard for me to say it because the way that it doesn't roll off my tongue like it does yours, but what a fantastic word, right? Much better than you all or yous guys. It provides a real function, and I love it. I think it's fantastic. Do I consider myself a Southerner? You know, first of all, I have to get to being an American, right? So there's a transitional issue. And I do consider myself American. I might not sound it, but I chose to be an American, which ultimately puts me in a relatively unusual position where you didn't choose, you are. But I elected to take the oath and become an American citizen with all of the privileges and responsibilities that entails. In terms of being Southern, that's a very, very interesting and difficult question for me to answer. My children are born in the South. My wife's from the South. I study Southern history. I came here to study the South. I think it would be a bit presumptuous, though, for me to claim Southernhood. But I will say I have an abiding love of the place. And ultimately, for me, Southernness is a kind of an aspiration, right? Like if somebody said to me, I consider you very Southern now, I'd consider that a compliment. But I don't think I'm ever going to get that compliment, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. What does it mean to be Southern? I think what it means to be Southern now is really, really quite different than what it meant to be 100 years ago, right? Largely because the demographics, because of people like me in a way, are drawn to this place for a variety of reasons, and people come for all sorts of reasons. I think that the place is marked by its diversity. I think it's a very kind of culturally diverse place, much more than people think it is. And I think it's a good thing. I think that it's marked by its hospitality. I know that is a trope that is often trotted out, but I think that it does have a certain hospitality. One of the reasons I live here is because I think people are pretty decent for the most part, and I enjoy their company, and I enjoy living in the South. And I have lived in the North too, no disrespect to the non-South, but I don't think I'd ever move. What it means to be a Southerner is such a fraught question academically. And it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? I mean, it's a region that is fraught with its tensions and its history, some of which is very recent. It's a region that is is, as C. Van Woodward once said, the only region in the South that has a history of defeat, right? And that means something, and it certainly meant a lot more 100 years ago. I'm not sure how much cultural baggage it carries today, but certainly that memory has not evaporated. And then one of the things that is different, I think, today than it was 100 years ago, and again, Woodward made this point, the per capita income of the South did not equal the US national per capita income until 1958. That's how long the legacy of the Civil War was economically on this region. Remember, prior to that, for all the wrong reasons, the South was one of the richest parts, and this state was one of the wealthiest states. And it was the wealthiest colony on the eve of the American Revolution. But the Civil War, it had an enormous economic impact, and it took until 1958 for the South to mainstream economically. Now look at it. I mean, South Carolina, largest immigration state in the nation. Where are people moving to? They're moving here. Where are businesses relocating to? Here. This is a kind of resurgent South, a Renaissance South, if you will. And I think that difference is the thing that really draws me. It's a growing place. It's exciting. I see this, and I told you this last time, I see that excitement for the region reflected in this university. It's a vibe. You can see it, you can feel it, and it's exciting to live here. It's not this backwater that people think it is. Now, I can talk about stereotypes all you want later on if you'd like, but for me, when I first came here in 1989 as a graduate student, all the stereotypes I had evaporated within about a year. Much more interesting place than I realized. I was interested in its history. I wanted that access point to its history, which is why I came. But living here taught me a great deal too.
When I was a federal law clerk, one of the most profound moments of my experience was the judge presiding over a naturalization ceremony. And just seeing the excitement in the families and the people who chose to be Americans and did the work to pass the test, do all the things that are required to be a naturalized citizen. And then, and thinking about what you're sharing and just thinking about this time together with you, is it possible for someone to adopt the region as their own, to where not only it's home, but they feel like they're a Southerner? And you say you don't feel like you're a Southerner. I just wonder if it's possible, particularly in the New South, where there's so many people coming here, and we have such tremendous growth, large urban areas that mirror a lot of the same communities across the country, and just so I just throw out the question: is it even possible?
Well, I think it is possible, and largely this might be just a function of my lack of own self-reflection on it, because I mean I'm so ensconced in studying its past. I wonder whether I'm really thinking about my situation in its present. Let me put it this way, and we'll go back to the naturalization issue. One of my dear departed friends was Judge Matthew Perry, and we'd see each other once a month in an organization, and I would talk to him about his own experiences in the civil rights movement, critically important, not just for South Carolina, but for the entire nation. I mean, this was a man of really textured, important history with a lot of gravity attached to it. And I enjoyed talking to him, and I learned a lot about the South through our conversations. Well, the Matthew J. Perry Federal Courthouse, that was when it first opened, it had the first naturalization ceremony there, and I was in it.
Oh.
And guess who swore me in? Judge Perry.
Wow.
And at the beginning of the ceremony, you have to stand up and you have to say, well, my name is, Joe Smith from Scotland or what have you, or so-and-so from Albania. And I got up and said, my name is Mark Smith from the United Kingdom. And Judge Perry said, Mark, it's lovely to see you here. And every other immigrant in that room thought I had a quick pass in or something like that, right? I suppose at that point, it was for me feeling American. If I kind of interrogate at a forensic level my daily life, Yeah, sure. I see myself as Southern in that sense. I mean, I'm living in the South. I'm dealing with Southerners all the time, like all 24/7. I study yeah, I suppose at a certain level. Whether I feel like it is one question. Whether I'd be accepted as it is another.
Agree. Those are two very interesting questions because, and today, how do you feel? But also, how do others feel depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
And the mindset of where they are in their understanding of what it means to be a Southerner.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are some people, just like in England, it's like, well, you can never be an Englishman, right? You can't because you're not from here. And yet plenty of people who aren't born there feel fully English. But it's the subjective versus the objective, right? So you can feel Southern, but are you accepted as such? And even if you're not, I'm not sure that's necessarily a negative thing. People have all sorts of gatekeeping mechanisms in their world, and they want to let some people in and some people not. And I don't know what people think of me, and that's fine. I know my students are always surprised I'm teaching Southern or American history. And as I tell them, when we get to the Revolution, I might be a little bit biased, but not too much, because it was a draw after all. As we know, the American Revolution, bit iffy. You want to come back, I know. And my kids rag me all the time. It's like, well, we won the American Revolution. And do you know what my answer to that is? That's true, but what language do you speak? Oh, well, English, but American English. I was, da, 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 da.